and I will complete the translation from before. So, last thing Rinpoche said was here that in the pratimoksha and in the path of individual liberation, the enjoyment of the 5 sense pleasures is prohibited. But then in the tantric path, actually, they are not prohibited. It is that one doesn't need to abandon them. In the Samantabhadra prayer, for instance, it says that when any of the 5 sense feelings arise, for example, when desire arises, neither accept it nor reject it, but instead allow awareness to hold its own. And then attachment will just settle in its natural place. So it refers to every feeling that may arise, but in brief, whenever a feeling arises, whatever feeling arises, every time a feeling arises and it remains there unrecognized, you are forming reinforcing a habitual pattern in the mind. And so here, according to this prayer, we are offering these habitual imprints or patterns to the guru by sealing them with the view, meaning that once you have understood the natural state of the mind, and when those feelings arise and you seal them with the view, then the clinging attachment to these sensations will naturally dissolve. As Milarepa had said, meditation practice has to be imbued with an actual experience. So for a meditator, they may partake of any of the 5 sense objects, but they may not develop an ordinary clinging attachment. So when these feelings of clinging and attachment arise, then they instantly recognize, I have created another imprint, I've reinforced another imprint. And in the same way, they do that with all the other 6 kinds of feelings that arise. So what is necessary is to immediately recognize them, to take notice of these feelings that arise, because it's these feelings that when they are allowed to remain in the mind, it is these feelings that create karmic imprints or habitual patterns. But when you recognize them and you become aware of them, then they will just dissolve. And that is what is meant with sealing them with emptiness. So sealing with emptiness means that when you seal them with emptiness, then you will not create further karmic imprints. And then here it says in that verse at the end, please accept this in the great bliss of non-duality. So non-duality, when a feeling arises in your mind, a thought arises, you recognize. So that is the crucial point. So let's take anger as an example, because anger is an affliction that is recognized easily. So when you get really angry at somebody, don't think about the outer object, the person that is making you angry, but directly look at the essence of the anger itself with mindfulness. And then when you observe with mindfulness, the mind is extremely clear when there is a moment of anger. The mind becomes naturally and pristinely clear. And that is what we call the mirror-like wisdom. So this is how you experience the afflictive emotions as one of the 5 kinds of primordial wisdom. That is, if you know how to meditate. That is why meditation has to be imbued with experience. So you experience it whenever a feeling with regard to the 5 senses, the 5 sense objects arises. So when you partake of any of the sense objects, then a feeling arises. And so when it ripens, when any of the 5 afflictions ripen, they ripen into the 5 wisdoms. And if not, then they are just the 5 poisons, the 5 afflictive emotions. So when an ordinary samsaric clinging attachment to the object in question arises, then you are placing an imprint upon an imprint. So this is how you experience it. And so it is said, especially in the old tantric system, in the Nyingma system, it speaks about the 3 vajras, the vajra of empty appearances, empty sound, and empty awareness. And these three vajras all come down to the vajra of the mind of empty awareness. So empty appearances means that there is no grasping to things that appear. So there is no thought of attachment or aversion, there is no fixation to whatever appears. Which no fixation, no grasping means that you do not think that the thing is real, but also you do not think that the thing is not real. You have no thought about the thing. But it doesn't mean that you don't see the thing. So you can still see the thing and you can talk or interact, but there is no thought about it in your mind. And there is no dualistic perception. So this no thought about either true or not true is the middle way, the Madhyamaka view. And so in this way, you sustain awareness until it becomes stable. And you practice the same with each of the afflictive emotion that arises, and then that is offered to the guru, this recognition of it. And so here you also need to understand that your own mind and the guru's mind are not separate, they are inseparable. So when a thought, an afflictive emotion arises and you know its true nature, then it becomes an offering to the guru. But then keeping in mind that your own mind and the guru's mind are one and the same mind. Even though now you see the outer guru, there's actually no duality. It is just like a big tree with many branches. It is all part of one. So ultimately, therefore, the one who makes offerings and the recipient and the offering itself, those three are non-dual, are equal. And so equal within the essence of mind, and everything that appears is the projection of the mind itself. So appearances are your own mind. When you understand that, you have understood the ultimate truth. And so this is what these verses ultimately here are speaking about, the ultimate fruition or the result.
Zambala talking the Nita Zabati Magina, Zababera, Zabaso Tawa Menti, coming Tata Magina, three Ramji Toto, then Zin, she, Tambun Zin, three she, three Patayo. Three Tabas of the river, Rebecca the Omen, down ships of Java, they look Mato, seven they look Mato, Niba three. Mago toda Congore, Yamyong de Vasson. The Tori Gong is the Yamyong de Goba Yamyong de Ona, Gong is the tree, not to run Satrovalas, Ronam Jobas, this one, Torsipati, Senator Yamyong de Dana, not that you Mokang and you mote Paxalmeva, songs, Toto, Nimati Dr. the song. Later, trauma was the this only don't need the Sanam Sibala, Sanam, Salam, Mamma, Lamtata, the chairs on Malay somebody. Lamtachi was a third lord in the Tasman Norida, Gomia Major. Tuta, shaking Travas, late day, Tatupama was only, there is Shiva, Travat, and immediately, the Brilla Shiba, giving in Tamtilla. Theory, Tuta shaking Travati, Nadimeva. Gomta, you mong me body. Go to you watching around here, Shar, little doctor, Sato Tawati, Tawati made our it, Triti, Numawati, Pushing Tower it, Semi Simpson, the 12 hours to tell Yamyong did run over 12 hours to Tago, same Trovari, summer Trovari, Yamong, I sing out his money. So go away. Gomba and Yamyong Tantric, teach the zone, another chap poker tongue at the red of the Tago, 그 레리들이 남탕들이 고야로 레시들이 별 철자장하다버리 철자장 제선 작동을 가이도록 놓고요. 자 마지막에 남탕들이 바람에 리조를 빼지도 짤 장마자들이 남도라를 빼자장 좀 적시게 제시해서 그래. 대답이들이 니메지만 됐습니다. 출근 돈이 돌지만 세미나버다고 한번요. 주제라면 턱도 말이야죠. 다 턱들이 나와 센터 타지 세미도 말 타지 되는. 저 같이 돈다고 같이 가려서나 라니 소디면은 저다 나와 담지랑 게 센세니 돈을 주고 다 담자. 데이지도 된지만 이제 잘려라니 해서 뒤책도 고스면 뒤책도 끼고 세는 정도를 또 돈다고 같이 가려서나 람람은 대리 대처매 가지라는 거라. 미시게야 그래. 도마 원래 비자 찍는 찍송도 가시 찍송도 다시 넣는 과지를 판단서는 다 줘야요 말이. 그래도 저거들이 주고 돈이 들지 마. 톡을 뜸들 라마다나 진 사제에서 쩍리를 타제했다고 그러다. 세번 내로 커란 것들이 너무 못하다 너무부터 야가 열매 발해지. 세번 내로 다 따위 타줘들이 이것은 다 내지나 이거 상을 그냥 명도 들어가서 뒤도 오는데 나도 좀 가려는데 저런 따위에 이들이 저런 때 저 타고 도를 쏟았고요. 그 제정제 따라는 거 따와 상행제던 제일 만들 때이고 hinge던 전에 또 채요. 그래 돈이 hinge던 데 와서
So this explains now how each of the afflictive emotions, how we recognize each of the afflictive emotions when we partake of any of the 5 sense pleasures, like form, sound, smell, touch, and so on. And then what we recognize is our attachment or aversion towards them. And so then it's not just the 5 afflictive emotions, there are many different variations of them. So each of those 5 afflictions can be combined with each other. So there's many different kinds of afflictions. But once you have liberated a single affliction, you have gained an experience. And so, in brief, any affliction, what it comes down to is grasping in the mind. That is what it really, why any affliction arises. So it is that when there is grasping, as long as there is grasping, you do not have the actual view. If there is no grasping in the mind, that is when these feelings and thoughts become liberated. It's the liberation of thoughts. So there are stages to our obscuration. So first, we grasp at something, and then that develops into clinging. And then that clinging develops into forming a karmic imprint, a habitual imprint in the mind. So the 3 obscurations arise gradually. So first it begins with this cognitive obscuration of not seeing the nature of the mind. And then because you don't see the true nature of the mind, then next arise the various afflictions. And then even if you have seen the nature of the mind, you also have to habituate it. So if it is said that the meditation has to be an experience pointing at habituation. So it means to habituate it, not just to understand it or realize it. So when ordinary thoughts and afflictive emotions arise, it is said that one must take them and train the mind with these afflictions in achieving a state of equal taste. So liberation, whether or not the mind becomes liberated from thoughts, you have to see for yourself through your own experience. If an afflictive emotion arises and you recognize it, you do not further deepen your karmic imprints, the afflictive emotion disappears, then it has become liberated. It is just like a cloud being cleared away and the sun reveals itself. So whether you're liberated or not, you liberate the thoughts or not, you can just see really through your own experience. So therefore Milarepa had said that what we call the levels of the bhumis and the paths is nothing but the increasing clarifying of one's realization of emptiness. And in order to know one's kind of point at the path, Milarepa said one needs like a road sign that shows one where one is at on the path. And so basically there are 3 signs that indicate like one's like level of the path, where one is on the path. And the first one is that a sign of being learned, of hearing, is that one's disposition is peaceful and subdued. So that is somebody who has learned about karma, has really thought about karma, for example, very carefully. And someone like that, with learning, their disposition will be peaceful and subdued, and for example, that manifests as a showing of great respect to the teachers and having no pride and so on. And then the second is a sign of meditation is an absence of afflictive emotions. So that means that even though afflictive emotions arise, they are liberated upon arising. It is called in the Dzogchen, for example, the natural liberation of thoughts that are liberated upon arising. So in the Dzogchen or Mahamudra views, this is how it is explained. And so the view is like fire, and the afflictive emotions are like wood. And so you have to gain a personal experience in liberation, how liberation really occurs. It's not enough just to say all thoughts are liberated, they're just, my thoughts are just like liberated naturally into primordial awareness and so on. That's not enough. It has to become an actual experience, and that's most important. That's why we said meditation has to be an actual experience. And when you understand these words actually are important, and you should keep them in mind, then whatever you do will become an experience. For example, if you're drinking a cup of tea, you will be mindful of whether or not actually this has become, imbued, this experience is imbued with your meditation practice. So you have to see for yourself, and no one can really tell you that. You have to train your own mind. It is just like you're learning how to swim. If you know how to swim really well, if you have learned that really well, then later you can swim around in the ocean really carelessly. But then if you haven't learned how to swim, then if you go into the ocean, then the first wave will just swallow you. So training is very similar when we train in awareness, and it is said that we train in awareness through the afflictive emotions and through the thoughts arising. This is how we train. That's how it is explained in the Dzogchen teachings, for example. And so here it says, when we speak about this Vajra goddess and so forth, so what this points to is that ultimately you have to realize that all appearances are your own mind, and then that this mind is empty of self-nature. If you just understand this essential point, then later, when you receive any teaching, you will understand the ultimate point of it. For example, in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, appearances are one's own mind. From the beginning, mind's nature is free from the extremes of elaboration. Knowing this, not to engage the mind in subject-object duality, is the Bodhisattva's practice. So if you just understand these words, then whatever other teaching or scripture you read and so on, or teaching you hear, you will really understand the essential point of it. If you just understand this verse, for example, you will understand it without any doubts in your mind. A certainty arises within you. If you don't understand this crucial point, then you can get really carried away by these great number of teachings and scriptures, and you follow each of these scriptures and words and quotes in there and so on in a more intellectual way. But you don't really comprehend the essential point of all of them. So that is why it's important to understand this. And so then here it says we offer this to the Lama, the Lord of Dharma, in each of those verses. So again, you have to see, is there a difference between my mind and the Lama's mind and the Buddha's mind? Actually, they are one and the same. So this is the Lama that is referred to here. It's just like a big tree that has many branches. So the branches are not separate from the tree. They're non-dual, so therefore accepted in the great bliss of non-duality. This again has to become a personal experience. And that is when you notice that when afflictive emotions and thoughts arise within the mind, you recognize them just like ice blocks. And then this recognition is like the hot water, and the more hot water you pour on the ice, the more the ice will melt. And so this is how then your realization of the view increases. And so that's the third point actually, then a sign of the view, of having realized the view, is the level of one's compassion. And it's the emptiness that is imbued with compassion.
Tata shira yemi javan jara nga yang pawang kanto pami na nga kama sa jara chupa malo de chi te pi she den de ta na jara tap ta shab yemi de tap tangbo shak tong ba ni de tong ni ge tong to na de ram ji ge de ni ge che bo tong ni ram shi ni ge che bo de pe na de tong ni ram shi de pen tu to la yo de sang ji ren chale de zo me ba de 클레 도미 노동대는 변나 잠초티 로테 잠초티 그냥 차롬데 쇼고서는 로요 말이지 잠초를 두고를 되게 차롬라 이게 셔도 그래 배티에다가지 또하면 배고는데 다 산지 로고도 조금 다른 정도요 대략감이 되는 변나 다 나라 이거 뭔가 배지 야요리 그 강이 로드 죽어야지. 이 카바드 죽어야지. 카바 자요는 이 로드 이 로그를 내가 해야 돼. 내가 해도 롱거야지. 뭐또 탐마바는 이제 이거 그래서 다 도시 줘봐. 배대라고래. 들이 샘미송을 샘템로 그랬대. 로라게 내가 돼. 가서 카바를 템로 그래. 대인들이 때렸다고 고나 상기시 받으랑 생기면 저걸 거성은 제와요 받더니 이제 주거래 들리는 거성들이 주거대 남카다 차대랑 진용관가 카메라지 차별해 대다워도 고아지는들이 동당으로랑 생분 내력들이 다들이 저 나온 데서 고아를 차도로 들이 이 데르들이 상계 상식 저봐 들이 저봐 장매봐 들이 저거대 다 받아 이상 세고래 대답은 저거요래 네, 롱거를 따고 생각 상지 정외만 좀 대탐제더니 남벌고요래 머리를 뒤 동시 받으던 버라는 때문에 벌써 벌기 돈을 매봐 벌써랑 그셈 벌기랑 그셈 pero 동보라라 그 동보를 주바 파만하지 돈당원이 대다워서는 니스메 제거를 양진 주바 뭐라 제거요래 얘기 고아지 말이 이제 토리니 매와라 내가 돼 도마다는 일들 조금더 놓고를 잡아라 통고요래 대상지 지금 보는 건데 봐도 이좀 되는 사례 니를 대다면 그들이 김보담에 장몽바를 때 말해서 양콩 갖고 자란 거래 나가 가는 로마 탐색만 나가 가르치는 대쇼요래 어떻게 가 좀도 나나 도박가는 매때
So then we are skipping ahead a few verses. So after all the senses, then on page 9 here in my text, and it says, I offer means and wisdom inseparable, the supreme victorious one, 5 families with consorts, the assembly of Viras, Dakinis, and the Buddhas filling the limitless sky. Please accept this great bliss. So to offer them means and wisdom, a method and wisdom inseparable, So wisdom is to the realization of emptiness. And when one realizes emptiness, the nature of this is actually great compassion. So they are a natural unity. So that is the means and wisdom inseparable. And the activities, so these activities of means, of method and wisdom performed by the Buddhas are performed spontaneously and effortlessly. So for example, what that means is if there are some ice blocks floating on the ocean, and the ocean doesn't think, I need to melt all of these ice blocks. But naturally, when it warms up through the heat, it will naturally melt the ice block. So that's this natural activity without a deliberate thought or intent. That is the effortless activity of the Buddhas. So these are the effortless activities of the Sambhogakayas and the Nirmanakayas. Just to give one really maybe simple-minded example that I come up with myself. So for example, the Dharmakaya is like electricity, and our different phones are the Nirmanakaya. And even though you have hundreds of different phones, they are all powered by the same electricity. And then the various activities that are performed with these powered phones is the Sambhogakaya. And so this is maybe just an ordinary worldly example, but it really seems to align with what we speak about the nature of the mind. So a phone, for example, performs an activity if it is powered with electricity, and then all the phones in the world are powered by one and the same electricity. So if you just understand this point, actually, you can understand how your own mind and the Guru's mind, the Buddha's mind are all one, and how that is also related to the nature of the three kayas, how they are one. So the base is the ground, is the Dharmakaya, the expanse, the space expanse of Dharmakaya, and this expanse pervades naturally all the five elements and so forth, everything. So that is the first thing to understand here. And then when you understand this, you will be able to understand the pure and true ultimate nature of your mind. And so then from that ground arise the limitless manifestations of a Buddha, the emanations of the Nirmanakaya. They are pure and impure Nirmanakaya, as we said. And then the limitless Sambhogakayas and the limitless pure lands of the Sambhogakayas. And so all of that is being offered. And so that means when here in this context, offering occurs when you understand the meaning behind it. And the meaning here is that there is no duality between the one who offers and the recipient of the offering, meaning that the one who receives the offering is your own mind, and the one who makes the offering is also your own mind. It is just like the tree making offerings to the various branches in the tree making offerings to each other. So it's all part of the same tree. Ultimately, we are non-dual. And even though it seems that there is a duality, like here we are making offerings to the other one, the Guru, the Buddhas, we have to understand that on the basis we are non-dual. And this appearance of duality is temporary and illusory by nature. And so this illusory nature of various appearances, their nature is the Nirmanakaya and the Sambhogakaya. There is this limitless emanations of Sambhogakayas, for instance, the limitless pure lands and so on. So in any case, this is my way of explaining it. I think that this is probably how it is. But then the Khenpos, the scholars who are listening, if you find that some of these things are not true and maybe I'm ignorant, then please don't hesitate to say that. I mean, you need to say that. Because I'm just saying all kinds of things, whatever comes to my mind, but it really doesn't harm me in any way if you actually, if you say that I'm wrong, if you criticize me.
这个大厦来是吧？初二，送过有的，这小的初二七八的刚来的嘞，就当地拉的什么山那这里， 시와다 제 유모모 람지들이 유모모 람지 이시 유모 이시 리드네드 제 시와디 유모 람지 시바 대 유모모들 존네들이 어르바 조선들이 어르바랑 조르들 초들 초사들이 유모 조르는 것들 초리 근데 민이 제타가 고고리 샤샤샤 초단지 대리 대리 시니스다 도르나드니다디 선왕 상은 초긴 나초 군장 셈지고 양반들이 세낭 상송대대가 내가 라고 처방한 것들이 랑가 또다 마토 그 제발 레마토도 저들이 상하디 좀 당근을 시원해 된다다 이거요 말이 그다다대로 센터 속을 발라더니 로르만 못 저기요래 대연 답체는데 하장 같이 뭐 요래 이렇게 강의들 거는데 소 집안들이 생콩 내려고 안 기절들이 소들이 다 당시 죽이시나 남치다기 시 제발 나도들이 남치들이 도지타들이 남치들 마다바랑인 두제는 마다바랑이 이치들이 호절매봐 도지도들 계셔매봐 들이 문제들이 선대식 좀 먹고는 계셔매봐라 내가 처방한 것들이 계셨다 로알 돌아서서 들이 teles나 남치다 이시지 않았더니 남치된 두제를 마다바를 세미스 소시바는 이시대 예례 요구 예시서 탐내서 시시다 딱 와야 배대다버들이 차대를 상계 통통질 때는 대다가 동시보고 그런들이 들이 인지해 봐 다다 네 감정은 저거고 말이야 선고 요래다 나와 사제부터 안에 너는 딱히 그냥 탈디봐 대라들이다 이시지 시에요래 대하 고성선 대 사마하고 타고 요래 그랬더니 고대기 잡아 차고 요래 그랬단 말에 개발해서 군성문 하나 송어들이 이제 라면 대회니 그랬단 말에 개발해서 대다를 거는 들지 고아들이 님이 저라메 방아 저기 대진이 돌라메 배조도 대신대 저거 거는 저라메 봐 그거 도지는 때렸더니 대진이 이제 줘봐 되더니 조지 잡아더니 동담 대신 거 줘봐 돼 뒤따와 나는 내네들이 콘대이가 들고 쏘다고 하고 따와하고는 콘대이들이 감정 모르고 맞선 거요래
So then the next verses speaks about the deities. So there is basically two kinds. There is the peaceful and the wrathful deities. And what's the difference between them? So first of all, a deity arises from the mind. And the peaceful deities, the peaceful qualities, the knowing the nature of the afflictive emotions, knowing that the actual nature of the afflictions is primordial wisdom. So knowing the nature of the afflictions is the peaceful deities. And then for the wrathful deities, then when these afflictive emotions become liberated through self-knowing awareness, then that liberating quality is the wrathful deity. So the wrathful aspect liberate the afflictive emotions, and the peaceful aspect know the nature of the afflictive emotions. So then we skip ahead again a little bit. So we're on the next page here in my text on page 10. It says, all manifest clouds of outer, inner, and secret offerings are offered in this vast mandala of Samantabhadra's mind. Within the mode of abiding, of unchanging non-duality, the unsurpassed offering of suchness is offered. So the offering clouds, the clouds of outer, inner, and secret offerings, all of these appear temporarily. They're a temporary manifestation. So ultimately we come to the suchness offering. So all of this depends on whether or not one has realized the nature of the mind. The secret offering really is the ultimate seeing of like the nature of the mind. And so, for example, nowadays there's some discussion, the scientists discuss the nature of the life force in the mind. There's a lot of discussion about that, and that's actually really excellent that now psychologists discuss that. It's really important actually to think about and analyze this like life force essence. And so what that is, this life force, it really, from a Dharma perspective now, is the true fundamental nature of one's mind. Now in the Dharma we speak about the difference between the consciousness and the primordial wisdom. The consciousness is the dualistic mind that is impermanent and because it is a compounded phenomenon. It is compounded and therefore impermanent. Whereas the primordial wisdom is changeless, like a Vajra. It transcends birth and death. It is Buddha nature. Buddha nature transcends birth and death. Just temporarily, due to confusion, there are the 6 realms of samsara and there is birth and death. And that is the perspective of the ordinary consciousness. So this consciousness is compounded and therefore impermanent. It is our ordinary mind. And the life force mind is the primordial wisdom, the ultimate mind. Primordial because it has been there since beginningless time, and wisdom because it knows everything. So if you only know it, you will know everything. If you understand only that awareness, you become free of non-duality. And in this way, it is that the 3 realms are naturally liberated. So then it becomes quite simple for the mind. If you only understand this primordial awareness, you know everything in samsara and nirvana, because this awareness pervades all of samsara and nirvana. And so these lines here are for the sake of realizing that. Or in the Samantabhadra prayer, it says, there is a single ground, yet 2 paths and 2 fruitions. It is just a difference between realizing it or not realizing this ground. And if you realize it, then, as it says here, within this mode of abiding, of unchanging non-duality, the unsurpassed offering of suchness is offered. So that refers to the unchanging Buddha nature, the Dharmakaya Vajradhara. That is this unsurpassed offering of suchness, where there is no duality between an offering and a recipient of an offering. It is the ultimate offering of Buddha nature. So this mode of abiding is the abiding within the view, the natural state of the mind. And if you abide within that, the natural state of the mind, you will see the life force of samsara and nirvana. And that is to realize the view. And realizing the view liberates you from the 3 realms of samsara.
통통시에는 이 시대에 뭐 저거를 그래서 레고하고지나 별로 호세도 나갔다 뛰는 팝잖아. 셈도 나갔다 뛰는 팝때 남는 게 하고도 셈 나갔다 뛰는 팝나 이 따와지 하고 송스 셈도 나가 체면을 따롱도 저 바이만 그래서 남카데라 다 리지다 랑그 공원에는 범반이잖아. 니도 뭐 범반이 남도 막 갈노처럼 남카요래. 서로 남카요 때문 남카 맞잡다 적자요 말이 되는 그 남카시바는 니도 왜 딱제들 남카시바는 니 올라오요 말이 이 과도 저 새로 남카들이 밥살을 됐다 하고 그래 남카들이 계속 보자면 뭐 너지 추딘 딱다 남카 좋다고 요래 이렇게는 보지 성 나 그래 추딘 거 추서만 좋아하고 하고 말이 이렇게 했다 그래 근데 따와가지고 이 친구들이 있는 거 따위 타 주지 말이 대리상 타 주지 이 제와미만 다 주고리 공인이 송더니 이미 휴지도 대등도 송 대지 송 차버리 대대기 쳐버리 니들은 이제 rolling 난 기보 남바라 다들이 기보 인진 뭐지 요래 기보 사람들 요래 리지 기비치 망보 조리 공나바라더니 공 주상법선들이 되게 rolling 하고 지려고 그래 rolling 제거래 아마 rolling 같은 타더니 같은 거 원미다 같은 판에 롱다를 왜 원미다 판에 근데 여밤이가 나서지는데 뒤따와도 서도라 때 초바 탐지는 초대 님네 대진이 졸라를 매번 조som더니
So this unchanging non-duality, that is also a meaningful term. So this unchanging here is not just, maybe a beginning practitioner can really understand the meaning. It's not just like simply something that doesn't change, but there is a very deep explanation on that can be given on this unchanging nature. So, for example, Vajradhara represents the unchanging nature, and sometimes some people refer to Vajradhara as the sixth Buddha, Vajradhara, or some say that Vajradhara is the one endowed with 7 qualities and so on. That is because there are so many qualities that can be attributed to the unchanging nature. But in brief, we can just call it primordial awareness, primordial wisdom, in simple terms. So to put it in simple terms, so we can easily understand it, first you need to understand that the mind is like space. And actually, when you understand that, you will naturally understand the view, the true nature of the mind. As Milarepa had said, when you realize that mind and space are inseparable, you have mastered, perfected the view. For example, if you have 2 empty spaces, like these like 2 holes made by the fingers, or 2 vases that are empty, the inner emptiness is one and the same, even though you have 2 vessels. But the space is the same. There's, no matter where you go, whether it's this space below the ground or the space above the ground, it's all the same space. And there is nothing that's not pervaded by space. And then when you analyze space, the space have a duality, there are 2 space. There is no duality in space. So it's important to really understand that there is no duality in space. And so then when you understand that, you will be able to really say with confidence that this mind is like a Vajra, like unchanging Vajradhara, has all the qualities of a Vajra. And so now regarding that, Garchen Rinpoche can also explain more about that. I myself haven't really studied the various scripture collections so well. But so this is in brief how you can really resolve the view. And resolving the view means that you are completely certain that this is how it is. And your certainty is unchangeable. You can't change it. You're completely certain. And also that relates to one of the previous beginning verses, like the spontaneous accomplishment. And so that's extremely important to think about these. And so regarding that, then also Khenpo Tenzin Rinpoche or Khenpo Samdrup can explain more about that. And also there are many other spiritual masters here that have all listened, reflected, and meditated and know about this really well. And you should have discussion groups with them and with each other about that. And so in this way, you can really come to an understanding of the view of the middle way, the Madhyamaka, and the various scriptures. So it's really important to have these discussion groups. And so then here at the end, this unchanging offering, the unchanging non-duality here means that once you understand the unchanging nature, then you are resting in the view. And if you have realized the view, that is the supreme offering. And the supreme offering is this unsurpassed offering of suchness here.
다 강성용 조금 같이 받더니 또 강난이들이 기일보치게 특성내들 제와송을 가면 들이 양양양도 되었다시니 거기 다섯 마리 강성용 조금 받아 홍랑 삼친이 얘기들 가요 3마리 강성 쌀장 문집에 수감지 셀려 좋아해서 렉장 만초에 또 감지 셀려 좋아해서 뭐또장 르den이 망가비 조금이 감 좋아해 소 감성용 조금 공부하서 너도 때 하자 같이 모여서 공기 랑게 삼치자를 이 수조들이 얘기들을요 말이 이 대대사 올라사래지
So then, regarding the ultimate truth here, the natural liberation of the 3 and the 6 realms. When I was in prison, Khenpo Rinpoche explained that in terms of when explaining the 3 words that strike the vital points in Dzogchen teaching, and having asked questions on that over and over again, he wrote down some handwritten notes to complement the original root text of the 3 words that strike the vital points. So these small print words that he wrote are not actually part of the original text, but he added them as a commentary, and one of those commentaries is the natural liberation of the 3 realms, so the form realm, formless realm, and the desire realm. And so he said that when you do not grasp at when there is no grasping, even though things are clear, when there is no grasping at it, then that one becomes liberated from the form realms. And even if even if bliss or thoughts and attachment arises, if the mind does not proliferate, then one becomes liberated from the desire realm. And even though non-conceptuality arises in the mind, when one realizes the empty awareness, and the non-conceptuality means not to grasp at a thought, even though a thought arises, then one becomes liberated from the formless realm. So you can also read about that. These 3 lines that Khenpo Rinpoche, Khenpo Munsol, he added are really very important, and he added them as a commentary to those 3 words. So they're not in the original, but this commentary actually, these words make this point, put this whole point into simple terms.
Serkhangma zabat oh Serkhangma sibo zabat Serkhangma jibi zakamji semle zot rikjao me choe do kamji semle zot oh 대랑 서 여기 나와 가르쳐나 되거나 될 모토에 되는 도 감지 semle zot 그 모토다 된 예미 마가베 이 종미 bekannte 그 dinge 사차되더니 마가베티 되는 종미 감을 좋아해서 그 하던 같이 뭐도 됐었을 저도 원작을 냠이다들 때 양탕형들 대상을 당하더니 대외슈아이 리터렌트나더니 한로들 때 돌아야고나 아까 가르게 위신이 망버렸다. 세상마다 하던 같이 머리 일단 제제데 이제 수고 까반난 철당난 우리 장부도 진짜네. 이 뒤나니지 롬보지 광강도 요래 하자 같이 모임에 대다다다 네 요령부터 돌아난 뒤손이 이렇게 봐도 좋아하더사래 마르시날 인덱스만 같이 이 탑지를 당나 좀 물건 범락 돌아나 돌아인데 하자 같이 모이도 이 설지답 지설지답 참아 이랬답서니 this 봐 가자 들이다 공용만 설지 니만 메사다 나마도요 설지때 따면 이제 문제겠다 대에서 처리해 저 상무동 상무단이들 하마 펜스를 돌아는 펜스니가 펜게 이제 다 세고대로 봐야 하자 같이 머리 또 생탈고 그래들이 호알타나 로봇탈로 로봇탈요 말이 룸코바를 탈렸던 생코바를 맡았나 이렇게 long-term 그냥 somebody 간도 개만 판네 공부 띠먹어서 땅가서 주로 공부도 왜 대로 말이야 간도 개만 판네 그 냠인 잡아비는 주 띠먹어 그래 선진대로 거는데 배추상을 배차로 먹었어라 라게 대로 또 티바고는 매송 다다리 메라에서 말이 되게 탐제 롱찍는 돈나 사실 좀 되게 까랑은 되니 거기 저기 강로 똥다 되는 얘는 도대 강계장 대다 당기 동대고 말이 대다 남녀 고발 줄 때까지 다 돈담고 된바 돈담고 된바 또 오늘 때 이제 우리 사바체미는 말이야 또장 그소요 말이 또들 사바체미는 되네 되니 당신들이 세번 내로 정도들이 내가 뉴뇽 답되고 가디나들이 찾긴 좀뭐 열에 주로 남아라는 거 가시시고 노안트 같은 것들이 그런 보체들만 되는 시작하게 이제
So, and these words that this small print verse that he wrote down really come from his own personal experience of really having seen the nature of the mind. Even though clarity arises in meditation, even though clarity arises if there is no grasping, then one becomes liberated from birth in the form realm. And then regarding the desire realm, even though the outer appearances arise, if the mind does not gravitate towards them, then one becomes liberated from birth in the desire realm. And then, even though one has attained a state of non-conceptuality, only if one doesn't grasp at thoughts that arise, nevertheless, one becomes liberated from the formless realm. So thoughts still arise, but if one remains inseparable from clear awareness and does not grasp at them, one becomes liberated from the formless realm. So these are very important instructions, and they really are given on the basis of a continuous meditation practice, someone with true experience. So in any case, practice them and experience them yourself. And now I just have explained these to the best of my own abilities, and I will stop the teachings here today. But again, I encourage you to discuss the teachings with each other. Now you have spiritual teachers all over the place, and it's very important to discuss, for example, the Serkhangma prayer, because it's a very important prayer. And also more elaborately, there are instructions in Lodjigden Sumgun's collected works, and also His Holiness Garchen Rinpoche has given a commentary with great kindness, and that's also very important. And so, in any case, it's important to take the teachings after you have received them and discuss them with each other, and you have campos that you can ask questions. I myself do not know how to answer the questions so well, but I encourage you to continue to study this text, and also the 100,000 songs of Milarepa are very important for discussion groups. And generally, when you receive a teaching and you're taking notes during the teachings, don't just put them on some kind of shelf and never look at them again. Often, like when we do that, all the notes that we take end up just being burned in the end, and we never really use them. You must actually use them. You must look at them again and discuss them and use them as your material to discuss the topic with each other. So that's very important. This is actually very beneficial for all the disciples. It will help you to really understand the nature of the mind, actually. And now when it comes to becoming liberated from samsara, what must become liberated from samsara is the mind and not the body. Even though it seems that the body might look liberated from samsara, there's no benefit in that if the mind is not liberated from samsara. Longchen Rabcham had said that if you are able to practice virtue wherever you are, there is no need to isolate yourself to like a monastery, a mountain hermitage. then you have no need to be in isolation and meditate in a retreat. That is, if your practice has become an actual experience, if you always are in a state of practice, then there is no need to physically isolate yourself. If you have, also Milarepa had said it, and also Longchen Rabsham have said, they both have said the same thing. If you have realized the nature of the mind, there is no higher learning than that. There is no need to read any more scriptures, to learn any more scriptures. So everything actually is included within just these quotes here. They all have the same meaning. And then there's another quote by the Buddha himself. The Buddha had said that I have taught the sutras, the teachings in thousands of different worlds, and I've explained them in thousands of different words. But if you understand their essential, if you practice their essential meaning, then you practice them all. The essential meaning is to realize the ultimate truth. And to realize the ultimate truth, you need to cultivate this realization on the basis of love and compassion. If you separate from love and compassion, then even if you have some lofty realization, it will be of no benefit at all. So therefore, what's most important is immeasurable love. On the basis of immeasurable love, sustain the natural state. And if you do that, then all your activities will become much more easeful and lighter. So always practice in this way, my Dharma friends. So now I've explained this to you to the best of my abilities. And if there have been any mistakes or confusions in this commentary, then I confess this openly to the Khenpos.
Sanjo Semjo Rinpoche Machi Bagan Chijoje Iba Nyama Mebaya Kongle Mewa I was a sangha, thank you, long